Hey, what's up guys, so Emanon here, and welcome to episode number 4 of Cheap Competitive Contenders, the series where I take a look at a budget deck list that costs under $100 and try and pit it up against the metagame. So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar, this is a series where I basically try and take the challenge of competing on a budget to the test. Can you actually face the metagame on a budget where your main, extra, and side deck together collectively cost under $100 or just a given price point? And today we're going to be looking at Burning Abyss, which is a very hyped up deck for the format, obviously because of the ban list. We got Tour Guide back up to 3, as well as Graph and Slater 2, which certainly helped the deck out. And I will say that even though the deck at full power without budget restrictions does have some problems facing the metagame at the moment, that doesn't mean that the deck is bad. It has a lot of good things going for it in terms of just being recursive as an engine. It's very resilient, it has a good time grinding, and it also can play traps in a relatively unique way because cards like Fiend Griefing and Backjack actually synergize with the BA cards, so you have more access to your engine while still being able to disrupt your opponent, which is really, really good. And if you guys are wondering how BA in particular got chosen, basically what happens is I run polls on my community tab where I go ahead and let you guys vote for a deck based on some choices that I see very popularly classified as budget, and you guys can go ahead and vote on those. So if you want to have your voice heard, be sure to keep your eyes peeled. I run those polls somewhat regularly, and I have other updates there as well. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and show you guys on screen the breakdown of each individual card's price according to tcgplayer.com. And these are not going to be the most ideal optimal choices, obviously, because we are playing on a budget here. But also, if you look at stuff like Beatrice and Borosword, those cards eat up together a third of our budget. So when you have 68 other cards to fit into about $65 or so, it becomes really, really tough. Hence, I will also have on screen for you right now a $150 alternative that you guys can look at if you want something a little bit more high power that is maybe a little bit more suited to tackle the metagame. And I will say that there's also going to be an Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheet spreadsheet, there we go, where you guys can go ahead and look at actually all the deck lists that I have used for this series, including this one. And there's actually going to be some API calculators that have specifically, time accurate sort of metrics of being able to gauge prices. So if you stumble upon this video later, or if you want to reference it at a later point, you can go ahead and see exactly how the market shifts and how that affects potentially your budget constraints. So definitely keep that in mind. And also, if you guys want to purchase any of the cards in this video, we're going to go ahead and plug, for the first time in a long time, that TCG Player affiliate link. So I actually do have one of these, and I don't get the chance very often to actually mention it, but it's actually appropriate for this series, so I figured I might as well just drop it casually. Link is down below in the description of this and actually every video. But if you want to help support me and the channel as well as my long form content, that is a very, very nice way to do so. Every little bit comes a long way. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and run through the card by card. I'm going to not be very specific and in-depth because this is going to be more about the actual replays and how we can tackle the metagame as opposed to the deck list itself, but I'll talk a little bit about it as we go through here. So we have 3 copies of Tour Guide, 3 Fiendish Rhino Warrior. These are the best starters, so to speak, to be able to get into your very, very core engine BAs, being Graph and Seer, which are of course the newly semi-limited cards that make the deck a lot more not only consistent, but also better to grind because you don't lose to super hard disruptions like DD Crow. Then we have 3 Skarm, which is very good because we do grind fairly often. 3 Farfa, 2 Libic, which is very, very nice because it's good with your Cherubini push. Just being able to summon it off Tour Guide or send it off a Cherubini to be able to get like Seer out of your hand that you added back off Dante is very, very nice at facilitating OTKs that way. And then we got the utility BAs in terms of Alec, Barbar, and Calcab. Then we got Absolute King Backjack as the way to sort of bridge everything together because you can set it off of Rhino as well as off Fiend Griefing, and it lets you set extra traps from the top so you can see exactly what you have to work with in terms of getting additional disruptions against your opponent. Then we got the only quote-unquote hand trap, which is Token Collector. Again, similarly to Backjack, you can dump it off various ways, but it is a nice means of combating things like Link Cross as well as Rorodon, just cards that are still running rampant to a certain degree, so it's very, very nice. And then we got our cheese win condition, which is Artifact Scythe and Shaddoll Dragon. Because basically, since we don't have IP Masquerader in this $100 list, you have to try and go for Dagda Beatrice. So you can Beatrice and Shaddoll Dragon, chain the Dagda to send the Scythe, and then Dragon Pop Scythe. That is the hopeful win condition that you lock your opponent out of your extra deck. Then you can use a follow-up Tour Guide to go ahead and push free game. Not the most consistent or the best, but it is what we have to work with. So that is what we're going to go with. Then we have Foolish Burial. And then the traps are very flexible. You can kind of tailor it towards your preferences or towards what you think the metagame is going to be. But for now, I'm on 2 Dynamiscus, 2 Wing Blast, which I like over Karmic Cup because it hits back row as well, 2 Lost Wind, and 2 Torrential Tribute. And then the only ones that I would highly recommend playing at 3 are Fiend Griefing and Trap Trick, as these are certainly engine cards, especially Fiend Griefing, but Trap Trick is also a very nice toolbox. Then we got the extra deck, which is Purple Dante, Beatrice, Breaksword, Levier, 2 Dante, Unchained Abomination, which could also be Trisbana if you wish, Borolo Dragon, Boro Sword, which I was very adamant on keeping in the deck list because the deck has such a hard time OTKing otherwise, especially if you don't open the Scythe combo, and you just want to make sure that you have a surefire way of actually getting in for lethal. Then we got Trisbana and Phoenix for back row decks, Cerberus, no Unicorn, out of budget. We got Dagda, we got Cherubini, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is good for follow-up plays, because turn 1 you normally will actually want to make Dante first, so you can like detach Rhino or Graph, get Seer, and then go into Dagda Beatrice that way. And then Gravity Controller for awkward Seer openers where you have to make Dante in the EMZ so you can make Beatrice. And then the extra deck, or sorry, the side deck is going to be 3 Lava Golem and 3 Godarla. If you have room or the budget to play hand traps, I would recommend doing so. I'd recommend stocking up on high impact hand traps like Droll, Gamma, or Lancia. Lancia actually works with Dagda, so that's also a nice thing if you want to do that. But these are nice just board breakers for those combo decks out there. And then we got generic stuff for going second in the form of Pankratops and Mind Control. We got the back row removal cards in terms of Cosmic and Heavy Storm Duster. You can play Twin Twister if you want to, but I like Cosmic against Eldritch a little bit more. And we also Duster is good with the Trap Trick. And then finally we got Imperial Order as our sole go first card. So with that, we're going to go ahead and look at the replays and see exactly where this deck's strengths and weaknesses lie. See you guys in just a bit. Alrighty guys, so first up we're going to be playing against Dragonmaid, which is a pretty interesting rogue deck at the moment. It actually has potential in terms of just being an advantage generating engine, utilizing Seal to create massive pluses actually for the deck, and just eventually outgrind your opponent with, just big beat sticks. And our hand, as you can see, we drew both of our Garnets in terms of Shaddoll Dragon and Artifact Scythe, but provided that this Tour Guide resolves, we actually have enough to nevertheless still be able to perform the Scythe Lock. And Tour Guide, of course, is a card that is very susceptible to pretty much every hand trap, but you gotta kind of just go for it if it's your only play, like in this hand, right? So we're gonna go ahead, of course, start out with the Tour Guide, grab ourselves a Graph, and then we go into a Dante, and then we go ahead and mill a couple cards, and then Graph goes ahead and summons from deck. I ordered that chain a little bit weird. I did Backjack as Chilling too, if you guys noticed, where I was going to shuffle my deck afterwards, so that kind of nullified Backjack. But luckily for me, it revealed 3 monsters. I don't know why I tried to play around Ash, because Ash would have certainly been used on the Tour Guide, but I just have a habit of trying to let Graph resolve. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and go Dagda, even though we already drew the Scythe, just because we want to make sure that we have Beatrice on board. We do exactly that, and then we set our cards and pass. Now, the cool thing with Dynamiscus is that it actually doesn't discard for cost, it does it for effect, so it triggers Shaddoll Dragon, which allows you to pop Scythe. So any card that my opponent summons or activates, I'm going to just use the Dynamiscus on, just shotgun it, and then use Scythe Lock ASAP. So our opponent is going to Lorpar target our Beatrice to make it so that it's not able to activate its effects this turn, so I have to chain it. Go ahead and grab Skarm just for the next turn push, and I grab Dante effect to return Seer back. Then we go ahead and on the normal summon, we're going to just use the Dynamiscus and Scythe lock out our opponents. So very fun and interactive gameplay, but it is unfortunately the only win condition that we really have that is actually super highly impactful. But we get lucky here with the Backjack as well. We rip a Compulse. I mean, not that it matters at this particular game state, but we got a Tour Guide in the end phase off Skarm, so we should be off to the races. We go ahead and normal the Tour Guide. We grab our Libic, like I mentioned. Libic is just nice to be able to put damage on board. And we just go ahead and get in for lethal, making sure we don't die to Nibiru here in the process. So this next game, we're going to be going second, and you can see that we did board in side cards, because there's not really any point of incorporating a side deck if we're not going to use it, right? So might as well utilize it. I figured Kaiju's, even though it seems really bad to Kaiju a Seal because it gets its tribute effect in Grave, you don't want your opponent to utilize Seal at a time where it's better for him, especially in a deck like Dragonmaid in particular, because they want to ideally use their Seal at the start of the battle phase so they can use their small Dragonmaid to tag out. So just making sure you don't have to deal with the disruption aspect of it and then deal with the smaller Dragon Maids just in the main phase so you can try and clear the board. I figure it would be a good enough strategy to warrant putting this in. And also it deals with the Shiel better. So yeah, that's what my mindset was there. He's going to leave with a copy of Kitchen, and then go into Striker Dragon so we can get Red MD on board. Bring back the Parlor, and then get the Fusion spell in the grave, the Changeover, and then go into Seal. So there is actually no Xiao on this board. So it's going to look really silly, but I am actually going to end up using the Scadarla here. Again, because I just want to make sure that my plays don't get hindered. Because think about it, if I know a Tour Guide, and the special BA, and then the BA gets bounced, I actually can't do anything even if I have other BAs in my hand, because they just all die. So, like, again, it seems really bad to Kaiju a Sphere, but in certain cases, I think you kind of have to. And I definitely do not want to use Pankratops on it. Yeah, so that goes ahead and grabs the Nurse. Nurse brings back Parlor, and then Parlor is going to use its effect to send the cleanup, or tidying. I read the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro name there. But yeah, I think I should have respected this back row a little bit more. I should have just popped it because it could have been an Imperm, and that could have just stopped the Tour Guide, which would have ended my turn. But even after this resolved, I had the chance to pop it right away, and I just didn't, and that's going to punish me because Ice Dragon's Prison is insane. So we go into Dante, we pop one of the small Dragonmaids just because I want to clear the board prior to the battle phase. And then we go ahead and use Graph as well as Farfa to grab a Seer. And then we go into Phoenix, but then we get punished by the Ice Dragon's Prison, and that is going to suck because Phoenix is also a Fiend. So that really is unfortunate because that gets rid of basically everything that we have, except the Dante that we grab back off the Seer. So we are now forced into a pretty bad spot. So yeah, he's gonna go ahead and grab back the Kitchen, and this is basically game over here. We're not able to really mount a whole lot of pressure. I could have possibly like trap tricked into like a Torrential or something, but I don't know, I just missed my window too. I should have probably done it sooner, like maybe like in response to Hospitality, but yeah, I just did not do it in the way that I should have, or maybe even in response to the Nurse. But yeah, I kind of let things go farther than they probably should have. Xiao hits the board. I'm not super familiar with Dragonmaids. I know enough about them to know their basic game plan, but I don't actually know the intricacies of the deck. So that is also one of the reasons why, playing against Rogue deck is also a good thing. And the Cynomiscus was dead up until this point, which I decided to just use it to try and force out Xiao. And then I could like maybe chain block a little bit. I grab a Wing Blast as well, just to, I actually get the Seer into the graveyard, because again, Dynamiscus does not discard for cost. So yeah, here, I don't think... actually, never mind, that was a different game that I'm thinking about. Never mind. So yeah, he's going to go ahead and tag out his guys and go into Guard Dragon plays, which, funnily enough, he doesn't even use LP, because Red MD is actually just good enough, and it was already in circulation. And the Boros Sword is there to just prevent his Seal from being threatened. Although, if I was thinking, I would have remembered that this is a Paleo monster, and it's unaffected by monster effects, so I could have actually made a better play next turn than I currently did. But yeah, you saw that my Seer actually brought back the Graph to special the Scarm out, so I can grab the Tour Guide in the end phase here. And had I actually just switched this Dynamiscus into attack position, it would have been a little bit better. Granted, there's a droplet to negate my Tour Guide anyway, so it doesn't really matter a whole lot, but it was there as just like an additional option if I wanted to use it that way. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and try and just like, make futile efforts to break the board, but it was long over after last turn. He's gonna get all of his Dragonmaid effects, Nurse in the Chamber, Search, and then my end phase Search doesn't really do anything, and I have no traps remaining, so this is effectively the end of the game. And I'm sorry that I forgot to save the replay for game number 3, but I actually did lose that one as well. It's just a matter of this deck actually losing pretty badly to Seal, because like you don't want to commit into Dante because your Dante just gets bounced, but it's hard to actually force the battle phase when you only have a limited number of resources to work with, and you can only special the BAs hard once per turn. But yeah, that's going to be it for this gameplay here. We're going to move on into the next match. Alrighty guys, so this next match is going to be up against Mekk-Knight Orcust, even though this hand doesn't really look like it, but it's a blind second list, hence the main deck Lightning Storm. So our hand is pretty good. It's a little awkward whenever you open Seer, but generally speaking, if you just normal it and have a way to get into Dante, plus a way to link it away, then you can achieve Beatrice. So I do it in kind of a weird order, but it eventually gets the job done, where I just go ahead and make a Dante and try and see if I can mill anything good. We hit a Rhino, which is pretty nice. We can send Scarm, and we go for a Dag to play as well as Seer Dante. And we were able to use this Foolish as a follow-up for the Backjack, and we were able to assemble a Beatrice. So this is actually the Scythe line that is pretty nice here. Now, sending Backjack is kind of awkward because it does actually conflict with Skarm, because even if you stack your deck, you're going to shuffle it for Skarm. So it's a little, not ideal in that case, but getting it into the graveyard is fine just to be able to trigger it and hopefully get another trap. In the event that I do get a discard trap, I want something like a Graph to pitch so I can get a little bit more value out of it, and that is that. Now, notably, my opponent, there was no point, if you look back on that turn, where my opponent really could have used the Impermanence to get value. So, despite top decking Red Ice Fusion, even if I tried to chain, or rather shotgun the Scythe in the standby phase, Beatrice would have gotten negated with the Imperm here, most likely. So, they're like something would have gotten negated. So, yeah, that would not have been a very, very fruitful outcome for me. And once I see the Red Ice Fusion come down, I know I'm actually in a very bad spot, because this deck actually has very limited outs, even in non-budget builds, to out Dragoon. So when I'm looking at this build, I'm like playing cards like Torrential and Lost Wind that just simply cannot deal with the Dragoon at all. And the extra deck is basically limited to like the Boreal monsters, which is obviously hard to get to when you have Dragoon in your face. So yeah, I do a very unfortunate play here, where naturally Dagda, because it has to chain specifically to something that's activating on field, basically I try to chain the Dagda to the Red Ice Fusion, and then I chain the Beatrice afterwards, and I'm going to chain this Backjack, because obviously I want to like resolve my effects before Dragoon hits, and before my stuff gets negated. But you're going to see that when I do Backjack as chaining 4, it actually hits the Scythe, which is so unfortunate. If I'd done it the other way, where it's like Red Ice Fusion chaining 1, Backjack chaining 2, and then Beatrice chaining 3, and then respond to Beatrice as chaining 4 for Dagda, then I would not have milled the Scythe, because, obviously my opponent's not going to deal with Scythe because Red Ice Fusion restrictions, right? But it would have at least been another body on the board, and having the extra bodies is nice to be able to just ensure that you have game. But yeah, Dark Dragoon comes down, and I'm in a pretty dire situation. Interesting enough, Beatrice does actually end up resolving, but Purple Dante is not really going to get us there. We just try and get an extra draw as well as a Seer Revive, but Dante's just going to be dying in main phase 2. We don't technically know that he's on Orcust yet, so pitching is fairly risky there, but no more summoning this turn anyway, and also hitting Succession ended up not being too bad, because this ended up being a brick anyways. So Dante does come back, and that is going to be met with the Dragoon effect in main phase 2. Not really a big surprise. We're going to try and add back Seer, that resolves, and then Imperm is going to be set, and we're going to grab our Tour Guide in the end phase, or try to, but then that gets negated by the Dragoon. So yeah, we try and make a Hail Mary play, but I actually messed it up, although I'll explain why it didn't actually end up mattering that I messed it up. But yeah, obviously Lost Wind isn't doing anything, so I'm like, okay, if I just clear my back row and try and summon BAs, we're going to be in there. But I forget to summon the Rhino first, because, dumb little me. But what would have happened anyway, most likely, was that Rhino would hit the board, and then I would have activated a BA, and then it would have been Chain Imperm to target the Rhino. So yeah, I wouldn't have been able to actually get that far anyways. Plus, even if this all happened, like, there's still the Dragoon negations. So this deck, again, just has such little outs to Dragoon. It's kind of disgusting. But yeah, we can see it at a shame because we messed it up. But again, wouldn't have mattered because Dragoon is just so difficult for this deck to out. Right, so it's game number 2 here, and we open the Scythe, always nice. But, as long as we open a way to get to Beatrice, we don't mind that too much. So we go ahead and normal our Seer, summon our Farfa. We just straight up make a high value Beatrice, because, like, we already have everything we want, basically, and, like, there's not really any point in getting Graph, because we already have the Seer underneath the Dante, and we don't need to link away for Dagda, because we already have the Scythe. So I figured, we might as well have 3 very solid materials under this Beatrice, to where, like, I can detach Farfa, even if it gets Ash, I get the Farfa banish, and then later on I'll have Seer and Dante both to just try and keep looping. So we go ahead, and then the Ash hits the Skarm on the end phase. And so here, I hold again, just kind of assuming that the Red Ice Fusion was a one-of there, because, when you see a deck count of 50 like this, then you kind of just got to assume it's a combo deck most of the time. Oh yeah, so Mekk-Knight Purple Nightfall comes down, and then it goes ahead and grabs a blue, and then blue also gets a search for a Girsu. Gyusu sends the copy of Orcust Nightmare, and then here's where I'd go ahead and activate Beatrice to send the Shaddoll Dragon. So I can go ahead and pop my Scythe, as well as trigger the effect of Dante to grab Skarn back, and then Scythe goes ahead and locks my opponent out of the extra deck. You know, very fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Tactics is just coming here and draws a couple of cards, but it's not going to ultimately result in anything that fixes the game state in a particular meaningful fashion. Blue Sky hits over the Scythe, but we're able to get Dynamiscus because we added back Skarm, so we're able to just freely use this one at our leisure, and so we can grab Tour Guide in the end phase here. Or hope we were hoping to, but again, we got hit with Ash. That is double Ash there. So no OTK this turn. I was going to have to make do with something else, so we go ahead and attach a Seer to grab Backjack, or send Backjack to the grave, and then Seer revives Dante, and then we just go ahead and hit in for a little bit of damage. It's a little bit scary because now that we're not playing with a cheese Scythe on our opponent's turn, our opponent can actually play reactively now, or proactively now rather. Purple comes back, goes ahead and tags out for a copy of the Gyusu. Gyusu can send the Nightmare, and I believe there's almost every Orcust card in the grave at the moment. So tokens are going to be summoned, and I have to be a little bit careful because like Fiend Griefing is nice, but there already is a Nightmare banished, so like it really just depends on what is in the grave. And unfortunately, the pitch for cost is the World Wand, so now it doesn't matter which one of the three that I banish, whether it's World Wand, Symbol, or Nightmare, because if I hit Nightmare, or if I hit Symbol, Nightmare can just dump it. If I hit Nightmare, World brings back the Nightmare and then links it away, and it's the same thing. If I put back the Wand, then the Nightmare just dumps the Wand. So now that all three are in there and there's the Orcust Nightmare in the banished pile, there's not a whole lot I can do at this position, which is pretty unfortunate, but I try and make a play anyways. Go ahead and get a copy of Torrential off the Backjack and Dynamiscus from the chain there, and then we're going to proceed to battle phase. I go ahead and just Farfa the Phoenix because I don't want to die to like getting out resource too early. I just want to make sure that my opponent doesn't have resources on the board to try and make Orcust plays meaningfully. But of course, now my opponent knows that I have Torrential because of the Backjack, so we kind of have to fire it off because I don't want Galatea hitting the board at any point because symboling it back is just too much for me to recover from. So yeah, all we have to do is a Phoenix, and we're in a fairly good spot. We can go ahead and go for Tour Guide into a Graph. We go Cherubini, and then Graph summon out a Barbar. We can Libic our own Cherubini so we can bring back the Seer, and we can go into Borosword as well as Seer, bring back the Dante, and Barbar burn for games. So yeah, despite it being kind of a messy sort of display in the middle there, it ended up working out alright, not too bad. Right, and now for game 3, you'll notice another very curious card that our deck really just cannot out. Like honestly, Dragoon Pass should not be game winning on its own against a lot of the good decks, but boy is it miserable to out in this deck. Ice Dragon's Prison is a nice out, but this specific $100 list can't use it. But again, if you can afford to play it, play cards that you can afford to have if you can. But if not, this is just a reference given an arbitrary price point. So yeah, we're pretty sad. I don't think there was any way for me to get into Beatrice turn 1. I actually totally forgot to pay attention. But we are going to go ahead and carry on here anyways. The fact of the matter is I didn't do it. I'll probably look at later and see if I was able to make a Beatrice, as well as a Dagda rather. Yeah, the whole point was like trying to Scythe and like preemptively do it. So yeah, the Beatrice Grave Effects gets negated by a Dragoon, and we are pretty much done here. We can't really play through a whole lot, and once the opponent gets rid of our Tour Guide, we have even less to work with. So we just go ahead and attack into our Dragoon out of shame. Alright, so 2 losses overall is not a great showing, but we are going to be playing against Dragon Link, so what else could go wrong here? Dragon Link, arguably the best deck of the format, but we do have to try and see how well we can fare. To be honest, this deck does have... You can see what the strength of this deck can be, just based on the way that the games that were won went. Either it's by successfully Scythe locking, or you can still grind pretty well with your traps. But run out of steam, and you are essentially just dead in the water. And Tour Guide getting hit with Imperm, probably one of the worst things that could ever happen. You literally just pass turn. 1/1 comes down, grabbing the Black Metal Dragon, Striker. I do have to hold my Torrential just until a point where I actually am forced to use it in the form of, just either LP resolving or Herald being threatened to be placed onto the field. So there's an exact point where that happens, and there is a correct time to utilize it, I feel. It's kind of like similar to Nibiru. Yeah, Marcher brings back the Phalanx, and here is where you can make Herald, so you can make it with the Marcher and the token. So you have to Torrential at this point. Unfortunately, our opponent still actually has a fair amount of follow-up left. There's Dark Worm left engraved that was pitched off the 1-for-1, and the Collapse Serpent. So just go ahead and poke for some damage here, and then go into Seal, which again, my deck has a hard time outing, but luckily we do have the Dino Miscus to get rid of it. But we do not have a play left over on our own, and this Token Collector is certainly not going to help matters. My opponent draws a Quick Launch, which is a very, very strong top deck there. Going into Tracer, we can chain the Tracer to the Boot Sector launch, grab the Recharger, and Savage for nothing because Lost Wind comes down. And that is pretty good news for us, although if we draw BAs, we can't use them. And that is precisely what happens, so we have to pass again. Our opponent draws a World Legacy Guard Dragon, just more extension. Going to Protector Whelp, I go ahead to set Lost Wind, and then World Legacy Guard Dragon can go ahead and just bring back the Phalanx, go into LP, move the LP, and from there it's basically game over because we have no way to interact. We can't use this Lost Wind this turn because it was used, or reset rather. And then Pisty comes down, can bring back the Red MD, bring back the Savage just as a big beat stick, bring Borosword out, and that is assuredly game there. Now game 2 is a little bit interesting because our opponent actually doesn't have a hand trap, so even though we drew Tour Guide as our only starter again, luckily we won't get punished this time. So we go ahead and go into our Tour Guide, we get Graph, we go ahead and summon a Dante, and then we can actually grab ourselves a copy of Skarm here, if we wish to, but we go ahead and grab ourselves a, oh no, we couldn't grab the, I'm dumb, never mind, we wouldn't have grabbed the Skarm, it goes correct to Ghost Seer. I'm tired guys, it's been a long week, I've been studying for midterms a lot. But anyways, go ahead and go into a Scythe, and then with Seer Dante loops, go into Beatrice, and we are sitting in a pretty good spot. We have 3 meaningful traps along with ideally a Scythe lock, and that Nibiru is 1 turn too late. So Foolish is going to go for a copy of the Dark Worm. I go ahead and might as well just get value off the Fading Griefing right now. And then chain Scythe to it, so go ahead and send a Skarm. And then on the summon of the Black Metal Dragon, I'm pretty sure just Beatrice here to send the Shadal Dragon. Trigger Dragon and trigger the effect of the Dante. And then we go ahead and lock our opponent out. And our opponent actually makes a defensive wall here, goes into the Tracer to pop the Black Metal Dragon, and then go for a copy of Recharger. And then banish the Tracer for a Red MD to bring back the Black Metal, and then triple Tactics to shovel back away one of these Seers. So I go ahead and I actually just Lost Wind here in response to the attack, which already went through, which makes the Red MD get destroyed. I just want to try and clear the board and hopefully go for an OTK, but I did not respect Nibiru, and there was certainly a way to do this. There's easily a way where you can just bore sword lethal here, but I did not do it that way. But yeah, I could have made a sword. I would have had Scythe and I would have had Seer on the board, so I could have gone like, I don't know, something like Scythe attack, Recharger, Seer attack, Black Metal Dragon, and then Borosword Beatrice. That would have been, what, 8,500? Yeah, that would have been game. So I think I just did the math wrong in my head, because this play plays into Nibiru, whereas the Borosword play did not, so I actually do get punished there very heavily. And I also had this to send Barbar if I needed to. So I have to send Jack instead because I am definitely not killing him this turn. My opponent draws a Safer, which is a pretty nice top deck there. We go ahead and fire off this Backjack to grab a Trap Trick, and then a Safer gets a copy of Wyvern Burster, and Striker Trigger, because obviously everything is live because there's no Striker Dragon access last turn, no extra deck. And then going into a copy of Romulus. I decided to again hold the Torrential for as long as I can because up until my opponent's actually threatening something that'll clear my board, I don't feel the onus actually do anything just yet. Now this Levianeer trips things up because it does not target, so very, very difficult. You go ahead and decide to just use it on the LP summon. That way, my opponent, even though he has a Levianeer, can't extract like the maximum value off of it. And I go ahead and actually grab back a Skarm off the Dante because I have a read here that I'm going to be using this Dynamiscus. Oops, pretty much on this Dragon Ravine no matter what. Yeah, so that's going to come down the Legionnaire, and it's going to pop 2 cards. Since it can't attack, I go for the Ravine, because that's a follow-up play. And then our cards get destroyed, and then we go ahead and grab our Scarm Search. So now that we know our opponent doesn't actually have anything, because I don't believe there's Brotar in here, we just go ahead, normal our Tour Guide, and go off to the races. We grab a copy of Graph, we go into Cherubini, and this is, kind of the idea. We have to send Seer here, unfortunately, because we don't have any BAs in our hand. But we go ahead and make a Levier play to go for a Backjack. And then we go ahead and attack the copy of Legionnaire. I actually accidentally clicked no for the Backjack there. So that is a minor whoops. We get in for 4,500 damage here. We set Fiend Griefing, and we have Scarm. So honestly, because we had Scarm, it didn't matter again that we didn't shuffle with Backjack or stack with Backjack, because we got shuffled anyway. But drawing a Tactics talent for turn is not going to help out this situation, and I believe the Safer was already banished. So that is going to do it for game number 2. All right, and finally for this last game here, we got ourselves the game 3 against Dragon Link, and our opponent is going first. Has kind of a wonky hand, and there's a couple of mistakes that happen here just because we're not used to playing on Dueling or off Dueling Book on Edo Pro here. So sometimes you just kind of like get lazy and misclick, or just accidentally misclick in general, and it's a lot less forgiving on Edo Pro because you literally can't take back some of the plays just because like it assumes certain actions that you do commit to game state actions in the game. So that is what happens. But yeah, again, we don't have any hand traps, so we just let our opponent do what would ideally be the full combo. Now, I think our opponent actually is playing. I think there was a siding error possibly too, because you'll see in a bit that this Hulk play is not the standard play. Because normally what you do is you go Hulk if you don't have another extender, and then you summon like a Rose Dragon, or you summon a Violin Cube, so you can link it into Herald. But I think the cube was accidentally sided out, or the Rose Dragon was sided out, so that was probably the reason why that happened. LP Striker though is still enough in a lot of cases. It grabs Tracer, Ravine. Here is a big rip. It sent the Recharger instead of the Router that was supposed to search this Recharger. And that's going to make a difference because that's the only other Rocket level 4, because the first Recharger was hit with Chaos Space. So that was kind of thinking a move too far ahead in advance of thinking Recharger as like the search instead of the dump that was happening off the ravines. So, but I'll talk about why it actually also doesn't end up mattering too badly. Pisty brings back a guy, and then we got Protector open to a Seal. Legionnaire shovels back the Lava Golem, of course, and then we go ahead and see the Carrier, and it's supposed to summon the Tracer. Tracer pop the token to grab Savage, and then it's supposed to be Savage plus the Heretic Seal with the Buster Lock. Now, to be fair, again, I have a Kaiju, so it wouldn't have mattered that the Savage would have been equipped with the Dragon Buster because it would just Kaiju it anyway. But it's something that would have been something to think about. Now, I go ahead and just try and force out the Seal. I don't want to deal with it, like, again, at a point where my Dante can get bounced. So I just want this, I just want that to be gone. Then I go and Kaiju the Tracer, but it has the Buster Sword, and it should have been the Savage anyways. Then we go ahead and special our 2 BAs. Unfortunately, one of them is Seer, which always is unfortunate. But that is actually 5 summons, because the Rhino was 1 as normal summon, and the Godaro was 2, and then the 3 summons for Dante were 5. So yeah, this actually does trigger the Seal, which gets its effect, and then also Dante to grab us back a Seer. So Red MD is there for next turn, and that is pretty scary. I did think about actually just shotgunning the Dynamiscus to get rid of it, because that does represent possibly a lot of link materials, because I believe Romulus and Seal are both in there. But we did not elect to do that. You'll see what happens as a result. So it brings back Romulus, and then we grab Boar Sword, and then try and go for game here with the big token, but run straight into a copy of Dynamiscus. So we're in a good spot here. We grab a Scarm, and he can't clear the token, so we grab a Tour Guide. So even though like there was supposed to be a Savage there, and ideally if there wasn't a sighting error, Herald as well, and we got rid of the Savage quite cleanly, and it would have taken just like an additional special of a BA to be able to force out the Seal and then go attack over the Herald. So I don't feel too badly about this one. I think it was actually fine given the state of how things went. But from this position, we can clean up. We should be able to clean up, that is. The Nibiru token's in a kind of weird spot because it's a zone where Shirabina would have been pointed to regardless. But we grab Libic, and we grab ourselves a copy of Seer, and we go into Boros Sword. Then we grab ourselves Dante, as well as Barbar Burn. And just like that, we actually did defeat Dragon Link. That is pretty funny, right? So, despite losing to Dragon Maids, and despite losing to Orcust, aka just Dragoon Turbo, we were able to take a set off of Dragon Link, which is pretty nice. So in conclusion, this deck, you can see, is still very much BA. It's the way that a lot of people are opting to play it right now. Just, grind with traps, accrue advantage, and then use a tour guide for a big push and hope that it's good enough. The lack of hand traps really does hurt. It's hard playing without like strong like engine cards or even traps like Ice Dragon's Prison. That's a really good one that is unfortunately out of the budget, but overall this isn't too terribly off. Like obviously you're missing stuff like Masquerena as well as Unicorn, but you can easily make up for those if you have the budget. But if not, you can do like reasonably and admirably well with this list if you were to take it to locals or something. But yeah, overall I think the deck is fairly good. I wouldn't consider it the best, but it is definitely capable of standing up. So that is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like with any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more informative and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on Discord, Twitter, or Twitch. All three links in the description as always. If you want to support this series as well as my channel as well, you can go ahead and look at the TCG Player affiliate link once again down in the description box as well. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys!